Good evening, Facebook land. How are you this evening? Thank you for joining us tonight. We are here tonight to discuss end of year testing, which is such a big issue. We get lots of questions about this all year long, but especially this time of year, people start getting a little antsy about it. So we thought we'd come on tonight live to answer your questions. If you have questions, leave them in the comments for us, and we will answer them for you right now, live. My name is Sandra Moterson. I'm the social media manager here for HEAV. And tonight I love this job. I get to host the amazing Yvonne Bunn and Sarah Olbris, the testing lady. So welcome, ladies. How are you this evening?
Good, thank you.
Doing well, thank you.
It's wonderful to have you both here, and what a topic we've picked for tonight, huh?
Yes, it's a great timing for this.
It is.
It is. Yvonne, would you take a minute to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes. I'm Yvonne Bunn. I'm with Home Educators Association of Virginia. I'm Director of Homeschool Support and Legislative Affairs, Government Affairs. And I've worked with HEAV for a number of years and worked particularly with the law aspects of homeschooling and protecting our rights to homeschool in the General Assembly, working with parents in helping them understand how to homeschool, the benefits of homeschooling, and doing how to begin seminars and testing seminars and how to choose curriculum seminars, and helping parents know how to homeschool. That's been my passion for a lot of years, and I just love talking to parents and working with them and encouraging them and telling them they can do this.
And we are so grateful to have you doing that. And Sarah, would you introduce yourself?
I'm Sarah Olbris. I have been the testing lady for quite some time, probably about as long as my oldest child has been around, so that's about 30 years now. And I've tested hundreds and hundreds of homeschoolers. I'm actually getting second generation homeschoolers now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun seeing the kids that have grown up and they're having kids and they're homeschooling. So that's really neat. I test in several different states, and when I have questions, I go to Yvonne or HSLDA because they're the really tough questions and they know even more than I do. I test a lot of kids that are normal, but I also test a lot of kids that have special needs or are gifted. I test for many different reasons, sometimes to do baseline testing, end of year testing. I do not do analysis to find out what you've got. You know, if there's a learning disability, I can usually tell you what it is, but I'm not official. So, just a lot of experience is what's brought me there.
Great. Well, we're so grateful to have you here tonight, and I'm sure there will be people picking your brain tonight about specifics as far as individual tests. We have a nice hello there in the comments, and also we have Lena, who she wants to know a little bit about showing. Let's see here. She was asking about showing proof of progress with an evaluator. So maybe we can come back to that question towards the end. Would that be okay with you, ladies? Or should we cover that now, do you think?
Well, we can go ahead and address it now. That way we won't won't forget about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's asking, I'd love to know more about an EOP. Is IEP, is that what we're talking about?
No, end of year. EOP is end of year progress.
Okay, end of year progress with an evaluator. If I choose to go that method next year, how do I know what to save or what records to keep to show an evaluator? Okay, now I understand. I can start, and then Sarah is an evaluator, and so I know Sarah can address this question also. Doing an independent evaluation as an assessment is an opportunity. It's a way to send in a proof of progress, just as a standardized achievement test. but when you are doing the end of year progress and you're using an evaluator, there are different ways to do this. And the law certainly allows you to do an evaluation or an assessment. And an evaluation or assessment, according to the law, the division superintendent determines if progress is being made by the information that is sent to him by an evaluator. An evaluator can be someone who is licensed to teach in any state, can also be someone with a master's degree or higher that can evaluate your child. So this can be sent to the division superintendent, and he reads the evaluation and determines if enough progress is being made. Now, Sarah is an evaluator. So Sarah, would you like to tell us some of the things you look for when you're working individually with a child, or how you might evaluate a child?
Well, let me first say every evaluator is going to be different, and you need to check with them early to find out what kinds of things they're going to want to see, because it can range from one piece of paper from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the year per subject to they have a checklist that they want you to go by, and they could give you a copy of that checklist. So it has a huge range. Now, that being said, you need to check out your evaluators, not just to make sure that they meet what the law requires as far as their credentials, but also find out how they're going to evaluate their child. You may find that they only want to do portfolio evaluations, which will show their progress, and then they'll have a checklist of things that they want in there. I know that all we have to do is math and English, but I like to see more than that. I like to see what kinds of books they've read, not just that they have read, but which books they've read. Some kids may be very prolific readers and they've read hundreds of books during the year. That's fine. Tell me that they've read several hundred books, and then give me some sample titles, because that tells me what kind of level that they're reading on. I like to know what kind of field trips you've been on. That tells me a lot right there, as well as unit studies. So the things that I like to see may not be necessarily what another evaluator is going to want to see. So check them out early, find out what they're going to want. There are some out there that are going to require well, let's say when my son was in first grade and had to be evaluated. These are very old SOLs, but an evaluator where it's going to go by the SOLs. And one of them said that they needed to have a sense of authorship. So I asked the person who was going to evaluate my son what a sense of authorship was. And she said, well, they can write a paragraph that has reasonable capitalization, punctuation, spelling, and they sign their name to it. My child was not reading very well by that point, so that wasn't going to happen. But I asked another evaluator, and she said, does he draw pictures and put his name on it? That's a sense of authorship. So you need to talk to your evaluators and find out what they want. Interview them.
Good idea. And another thing, you mentioned SOLs. Just to make sure that parents know that we do not have to go by the SOL standards. That is clearly for public school students leading to a public school diploma. And so Correct. We do not have to meet that standard. Of course, it's very easy to meet, and most homeschoolers, go way beyond that. But we're not looking at a portfolio or any type of evaluation that would necessarily have to be compared to the standards of learning for the state of Virginia. So we're okay with that. So good.
That is very true. Mm-hmm. I have evaluated kids that have IEPs. Some of them are from the school system, or they call it something different, like an SEP for a child who has been homeschooled. All it is a list of objectives for that child. And we can do an evaluation based on that. I've had kids that have brain injuries and they can't do what the SOLs would require of them, but they can do the goals that have been set out by their parent for that year. So it's just a list of objectives, and that's why you need to check with your evaluator to find out what they want to see.
Right.
Great.
And also, I'd like to let you know we have a list of evaluators on the HEAV website. Under our testing section, we have counselors, testers, and tutors. And you can go to our website, www.heav.org, under testing and testing counselors and tutors for an extensive list of different types of testers that we have and tutors that we have there too. And you can find someone in your geographical area that's close enough for you to use for an evaluation. You can contact them. We're not endorsing any of these people, but you can contact them individually to find out the cost, find out how they want to evaluate your child, what their credentials are, and so forth, just as Sarah just mentioned. So that's there to help you find the right person that fits you and your child.
Okay. Now, tonight, of course, we weren't intending to talk about evaluators. We're here tonight mostly to talk about end-of-year testing. So this next question is perfect. Lisa has a question about the SAT. She says, last year we did the PSAT, and the following month after they did the PSAT, they then did the SAT. She turned in the PSAT last year as her end-of-year testing and was wondering if she could turn in that SAT for this year's end-of-year testing.
Turning in, let me make sure I'm clear on this. Let me read it again. Last year, she did the PSAT and did the SAT the next month, turned in the PSAT last year. I was wondering if I could turn in last year's SAT for this year's. Well, when you say, you may be able to do that. When you say last year's, I'm assuming, are you saying last September, October SAT? You could possibly do that. I'm not sure, actually. I haven't ever thought of it like that. But I'm assuming you've taken both the PSAT and the SAT in the same year. And so you're wanting to, in the same fall, let's say. So you're wanting to turn in the SAT for this year's evaluation. I'm not sure the timing on this, so I'm not quite sure I can answer it correctly. So maybe if you could clarify a little bit on that, Lisa, so that I'll understand a little bit better.
I think the confusion is what year was the PSAT and SAT taken.
Right,
the SAT was taken in, it was taken in 2007, the fall of 2017. That would be okay, right?
The same year as the PSAT was the fall of 2017 also? I guess that's what we're meaning here.
I think usually the PSATs are taken in October.
Yeah.
Correctly, they're taken in October. So that would mean that the SAT was taken in November. Now, if it was
okay, so Lisa does say that she took November 2017 was the SAT.
Okay, and October was the PSAT. So, it seems to be that's when you would typically take it. So I think you could go ahead and turn it in. There's nothing that says you couldn't do it then. So, the purpose of having that law change that we initiated was so that high school students wouldn't have to take so many tests. And if you're already taking the PSAT, the ACT, or the SAT, College Board's SATs, then you don't have to do on top of that a standardized achievement test. So, it seems to meet that reasoning and that requirement. So I would think that you could turn that 2017 SAT in for this year. So instead of doing a standardized achievement test.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for that. We have another question here. My son is in 9th grade. I am gearing his education toward college prep and was curious as to what would be the best test to give him this year and every year to follow. Should I give the PSAT this year and then the SAT every year following this year?
Well, it's up to you. The PSAT is not really going to count until there are some practice PSATs that you can do through the College Board now. But the PSAT score is not going to count until the child's junior year. And that's when you're put in the pool with scholarships, and you may get become a National Merit Scholar. And then you get opportunities for scholarship monies from different colleges that will start recruiting you to come to their school by offering you scholarships if you score very high on that test. And so that's the benefit of the PSAT. Practice tests are wonderful. It doesn't hurt to practice, to take it, to be familiar with the timing elements, which homeschoolers are not as strong on as some other students are who take the SATs or the PSATs, because we often give our children all the time they need to do the work that they're supposed to do. That may not be a benefit when they get to college. So learning to take time tests, learning the types of reasoning questions that are on these tests, all of these things are good. So it's good, certainly, give your children the test as many times as you want to pay for them to take it, and it will benefit them, and it could raise their test scores. You know, I've known some students who've taken the SAT, and they've raised it 200 points by taking it 4, 5, 6 times. It doesn't always happen like that, but it may. And so you can learn a lot by doing that type of testing. There's always test prep and things like that too. You can take the PSAT as many times, the SAT as many times as you want to. So completely up to the parent.
Nice. Okay, and Melinda has a question here. She says, I have plenty of time, but figured it would be a good time to make sure. Do we have to test for kindergarten or starting in first grade?
Oh, that's a good question. I love that question. Okay. Kindergarten, if your child is not six on September 30th of the school year, when you start teaching your child that year, then you are not required to send in test scores for that child. It is not whether he's in kindergarten or first grade. It is totally based on the age of the child on September 30th of the school year when that school year begins. So if your child was still 5 last September 30th when this year began, then you would not test him this year. You would wait to do the testing for the first time next year. And I do appeal to parents. You may have a very bright child. He may do super well on a test like that, but don't test him and turn it in. If you want to test him and keep it yourself for your own record, that's great, do that. But you don't want to set a precedent so that superintendent expects all children who are 5 years old or kindergarten, because they're in kindergarten or maybe first grade. He's going to start expecting that from all the students that are that age. And we don't want that. That is not what the law requires. So make sure if your child is not 6 by September 30th, you do not have to test your child or turn in any standardized achievement test scores. Not kindergarten or first grade. It's the age of the child on September 30th. Okay?
Great. I have a comment about kindergartner testing.
Yeah.
They are so inconsistent with what they know. You know, today when you teach them something, tomorrow you have a question about it and they look like you have grown 3 heads. They do the same thing on a test.
Right.
There are so many questions that you know that they know the answer, but they don't get it right. So don't base everything on how well they do if they do take that kindergarten test. They're just very inconsistent. That's life. It's not long-term memory yet.
I agree. You know, I used to think sometimes my children, you know, one day they do great and the next day they didn't feel like doing anything. And so that may be testing day where they just get started on it and they just get tired of doing it. So they just stop, or they don't want to think about it anymore. They just want to go play. They're just young and immature. And so don't put that pressure on your children. It's not necessary.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we have Leigh who says, is the CAT test sufficient for 7th grade?
I would say it would be. Sarah, you want to add something to that?
It is sufficient. I would be careful which CAT I get, because the Cat 5 and as the number goes down, are extremely old. The Cat 6 is also known as the Terra Nova. That's the newest one, and that is what I would recommend. Some people will tell you that the Cat, the original Cat, which is still out there, is much harder. Well, it is in the English portion because much more was required back in the 60s for all of those English things. But for math, what the requirement was for graduating from high school was Algebra 1. Now it's Algebra 2. So you may not get a true picture of what your child really knows or how they sit nationally with other kids now, which is where their competition is going to be as they get older and going to college and so on and so forth. So just be very careful about which Cat you get.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
The school systems will accept it.
Right. Very good.
So Lisa, we answered her question earlier about the PSATs and SATs, and she just says, thanks for answering. Her daughter didn't want to take a new SAT, so her daughter thanks us too, I'm sure.
I understand perfectly on that one. I'd like to go back and just address one more thing that I just thought of in regards to the last question about the California Achievement Test being sufficient. And I agree with Sarah on the new test, the Terra Nova 2 California CAT. It's a good test. Most standardized achievement tests measure basically the same thing. And so, I mean, they're not exactly the same, but they measure pretty much the same topics, the same, fourth grade is fourth grade. And almost all textbooks that you have, workbooks, cover and introduce the same things in fourth grade. Same thing about fifth grade. And so there's a pattern that goes with that. And these nationally normed standardized achievement tests, they will norm the test or compare your child to a group of children who have taken the test about the same time that your child is doing it, and they're the same age. And so that's where the comparison comes in. But almost all of these tests, the Stanford, the California Achievement, the Iowa Basic, these types of tests are very similar. And so, you can just decide which one you want to use, and you can stick with that. That's a good comparison. But even if you switch test one year to another test because you just decided to do a different one, it's not going to be that different. So there's not a big issue with that. You can certainly change the test. I wouldn't change it every year, but I think
it's good to have the same test at least 2 years in a row, yes, so that you can compare what kind of progress your child has made.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Nice. Okay, so Ashley has a question kind of tagging on some Melinda's earlier about kindergarten testing. And she says she pulled her kindergartner out, but he's in first grade material. So would she end of year test for first grade?
All right, so her child is a kindergartner, but he's advanced. He's doing well. Well, depending on, he's in first grade material. Well, if he is old enough to be tested now, if he's, say, 6 on September 30th, and he's in kindergarten but doing first grade, then I would test him. I don't know that I would necessarily test him at first grade level because if he's not supposed to be in first grade, I would go ahead and test him at kindergarten if he was 6 on September 30th. And he would look, because what you're doing with testing is you're showing how your child is progressing compared to other students his age. And so if he's doing a higher level work, then that shows that he's doing a higher level work. It's measuring what he's doing by other children who are his age. So I would test him at the level that he's supposed to be in and see how that goes. He'll probably score very well. Do you see any disadvantages of that? Sarah?
It depends too on which test you use. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of kindergarten tests are pre-reading tests. The first grade tests, a lot of them are really difficult reading. So if they're not reading really well, I mean, I know he's doing a lot of first grade work, but they got to be reading really well, like to do the Iowa, Stanford, the California, those bubble kinds of tests. There's another level of maturity with that. But if you're doing an evaluation, you know, showing that he's doing first grade work is great. But there may come a point in time also when he slows down.
Yes.
Want to do the work. And then you're going, oh my goodness, I've been turning in these scores for the grade level higher and he's not doing that. So if you do it for the grade level that his age is appropriate, then that's probably a better way to do it. If you ever have to slow down, you can without feeling guilty about it.
Right.
Ashley did also add some extra information. She says he's only 5 and will be 6 in July.
Okay. Well, then I wouldn't, I mean, don't test him this year, just next year. And then I'd test him on the level he's supposed to be working at. And, you know, another thing that my years of experience with working with homeschoolers too, a lot of times students who are eager to learn, especially little girls, who are very eager to learn at the beginning, at kindergarten, first, second grade, sometimes they level out. They could be advanced at the beginning, but sometimes they just level out and they're average students by the 3rd or 4th grade, and they're just progressing nicely and doing well on track for their age and for their grade level. And so, like Sarah said, you don't have to just, you know, then be concerned about holding them back or pushing them forward. They're just where they're supposed to be. And that's what the test is evaluating them with children who are their age. So that's another good reason to keep them on track with the evaluation.
Okay, this one is very interesting. Inez says, are homeschoolers required to score higher on the SOL than those going to a brick and mortar school?
We don't have to take the SOL test at all. In fact, we're not allowed to take SOL test. So that leads to a public school diploma. And so instead of an SOL test, homeschoolers yearly, by August 1st, after they've homeschooled, they are to provide a standardized achievement test or an independent evaluation. And so, SOLs are not part of the way we test. So we do not have to take those tests. Now, if you ever plan to put your children back into school, then if you've homeschooled and you've decided to re-enter a public school, government school again, then it is likely you would have to take an SOL test then for grade placement. A lot of, you know, some of the policies are different, but a lot of schools will require SOL testing to enter school for placement. So that's the only reason you'd be taking that, but you would not do that as a homeschool student.
Some people refer to our end of year testing as an SOL test, even though it's not an SOL. They refer to it meaning an Iowa, Stanford, California, Woodcock, whatever end of year test. Are we required to score higher on that kind of test than what the public schoolers are required? I'm not sure that the public school has a minimum score. Well, they don't do those tests anymore anyway. They do the SOL testing instead. And there are requirements for that, but I can't really say if one is higher than the other.
No, the standards of learning test, they have certain benchmarks that have to be met in order to go on to the next grade level. And so,
but I don't know how they compare to our 23rd percentile.
No, homeschoolers have to score on a standardized achievement test in the 4th stay 9 or higher, and the 4th stay 9 begins at 23 percentile or higher on the bell curve. And so, you know, that's where we are, and the standards of learning are not standardized achievement tests. They are unique to the state of Virginia. They were formulated by the Department of Education only for the state of Virginia. And so there is no comparison with those scores outside of the state of Virginia, since most public school students no longer take standardized achievement tests. So it's hard to say how Virginia students are doing since there's no comparison nationally with those students and other students.
Interesting. We have a question here. What do you suggest for end of year testing? Do you have a go-to test that you would recommend for everybody?
You want me to take that one?
Go ahead, Sarah. I don't think I do, but you go ahead.
No, it really depends on the child and who they are and how they learn and how they work, you know, and how they can give back information. I've got some kids that they need to do a portfolio and that's all they should ever do. I've got other kids that do better with a one-on-one type test where the evaluator will ask questions of that student orally. Then there are others that do great on the bubble test because they're super guessers. Whether they know the information or not is really up for dibs, but they are really good guessers and good bubble test takers. So it really just depends on the child.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would like to say, I'll share this with you because we haven't actually announced this yet, but I'll announce it right now. I do for this year have a suggestion for a test. We are getting ready to do a study in Virginia regarding homeschoolers and how they're progressing academically. And we are going to be doing the study with Dr. Brian Ray in order to prepare for the future, because we know with a lot of things that are in the media now, there are a lot of challenges to homeschool freedoms, and we want to protect our rights to homeschool. So we want to have concrete information that shows that homeschoolers are doing well, whether they're religiously exempt or whether they've complied with the homeschool statute. And so we are planning to do a study with Dr. Brian Ray, and Seton Home Study is going to be working with us on that study. And they are going to be providing a discount on the Terra Nova 2 Cat 6 test. And that's the only test. It's the newest version of the Terra Nova 2 California CAT 6 test. And so it's the newest one. It's a 20% discount that they're going to be offering to Virginia homeschoolers only who would like to participate in this study. And we are looking for not only those who've complied with the notice of intent, but also religiously exempt parents who don't have to test. And we know if you're religiously exempt, you do not have to test your children. You don't have any accountability to the state as far as turning in test results. But I know that many religiously exempt parents test just because they want to know how well their children are doing with their academic program. Are the parents teaching all the subjects that they need to be learning compared to other students? And so this is information that we can use in the future. If there is a bill or something that comes in the General Assembly or an attack on homeschooling, then we will have some good information, some facts that we're gathering this year only. During this testing season, it will be we'll be opening up soon, and it will go through the end of May. And so I encourage you to look at Seton and look at the Terra Nova 2 Cat 6 and possibly consider using that test for this year, religiously exempt as well as notice of intent homeschoolers. So just to give you a little heads up on that when you're thinking about your testing, that will be a help for our homeschool freedoms to gather this information. So that would be my encouragement for this year's testing anyway.
That's great. I'm glad that they're going to do that.
Good.
That's exciting. Yeah.
There too.
So, okay, so Tiffany says, my 7th grader is probably a year behind in math skills. Should I test him on his current grade level this spring or retest him on the same level as he was tested last year?
Well, I would suggest testing him on the level he's supposed to be on now and not retesting him on the same level as last year. Now, I know that a parent can retain a child and keep him in the same grade level. But, you know, we're talking about you wouldn't do that unless your child is doing poorly in everything across the board, not just one subject. So I would be very careful about that. You know, and you have to remember you're looking at the composite score. When your child is tested, the law only requires you to provide a composite score in or above the fourth steni, 23 percentile or higher. And so when you do that, you don't have to test in history or science, just language arts and mathematics and all the components of that, of those two subjects. So, it's very likely that that composite score could be above 23 percentile. If he's doing fairly well in language arts and then it's not an average. They have, you know, a formula that they go by in these statistics. But I would at least test him where he's supposed to be. Give yourself enough time by testing early, so that if the score is low, then you can retest, or you could do an evaluation, an independent evaluation with an evaluator, someone with a master's degree, or someone with a current teaching license in any state. Sarah, do you have any suggestions for that?
Yes, as a high school math teacher, which is my certification, I will tell you that there's not an awful lot of difference between 6th grade math and 7th grade math. Mm-hmm. So he's probably going to do fine at that 7th grade level.
Very great. That's encouraging. I do know from having talked about high school, I do know that in the middle school, there's a lot of repeat. There's a lot of review. It's getting the kids ready for high school. And so 6th and 7th grade, you know, I agree with you totally on that. I agree.
Right.
Very good.
There's also not a lot of algebra at that level on the bubble tests. Still a lot of general math. Mm-hmm. If you know how to add, you know how to add.
Right. Good.
Good to know.
Okay, good.
All right. So Jackie wants to know, what would happen if my son scores low? What are my options?
Well, number one, make sure that you followed all the testing regulations when the scores come back to you. Number one, you don't have to turn in the scores yet. You can wait and you can have an independent evaluation done. So I would not turn in those scores. I would do an evaluation. I'd call Sarah. I'd talk to her about how she could evaluate your child, looking at samples of his work and so forth. If you turn in your scores and they were low, the division superintendent may, and this doesn't always happen, but legally he can put you on probation, which means that you would have to come up with an educational plan for your child. It would have to be acceptable to him. You would have to show how you are going to remediate your child, what your plans are, what different curriculum you may be using, what different programs you may do, tutoring, things like this, to enhance your child in, his academic studies in the area that he's weak in. So that's not a good thing, because there is a lot more oversight. And if your child doesn't do well, then he may not allow you to continue homeschooling. So if there's a question, because there's a low score, that's a good opportunity, once you realize your child is weak in a certain area, to perhaps consider having him tested in another way to find out what the learning challenges are, what the difficulties are. Are there learning disabilities? Is there dyslexia? Is there something that's causing this? We always hope our children will outgrow these things, and they may as they mature a little bit if you're dealing with a young child, but they may not. They may be things they need to strengthen and learn to cope with. And you as a parent may also need to learn some different methods of teaching the child that would help him. So I would be careful with low scores. They could be a signal that something's wrong, but it could be an off day when he took the test. So you might want to test again, or you might want to do an evaluation. So that would be my recommendation.
I agree, totally.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's see. Marisol says, just joined and have been wondering about this a lot lately. I know this is such a great time to talk about this topic, isn't it? Yes. This would be my first time having my girl take a test. What is recommended for a first grader that's best with one-on-one?
Sarah, can you suggest something?
I would either do an evaluation or a Woodcock-Johnson is good. A wide range achievement test is good. Those are set up to be done as a one-on-one test. A lot of those tests are very oral. For instance, the math. You don't have to, your child does not have to read word problems. All of the word problems are read to them. They have to read the 1+1 type problems, but they don't have to read word problems to themselves. The Woodcock-Johnson is used as a diagnostic test. It's used to test for gifted and talented. It has a huge range of what it's actually used for. So that one is really good. It starts at a very low level and it gradually gets harder and harder and harder until there is a ceiling where the proctor needs to stop doing the testing. But it does go all the way up through college level material. So one can use that for kids that are working on different levels for whatever reason. For kids who need the one-on-one, who just need that low stress, but the parents still want the black and white test with the numbers results. But an evaluation, you're getting someone's opinion, but that's not always a bad thing. It's a really good thing for the young kids to do that one-on-one.
Now, Sarah, parents are not able to obtain that particular test, the Woodcock-Johnson, are they?
No, they are not allowed to give it unless they are qualified.
Right.
And someone that's qualified is going to own that test. Mm-hmm. So there are many different places where you can get it. Different counseling services will do it. Colleges and universities use their, they have their grad students to use your kids as their guinea pigs. But they are overseen by licensed professors. Mm-hmm. So you get the good quality that you need to have. There are other people, individuals like me, that own Woodcock-Johnson and can administer that. So, there's different places where you can find that.
Right. Good. Very good.
Great. And this question is perfect to follow that up with. Laura is planning to homeschool for the first time this coming fall. Is she allowed to give the test herself, or does she have to take them somewhere?
Well, it depends on the test that you use. It's important to follow the test publisher's instructions, and they are very clear on the qualifications of the tester. And there are some tests that parents can administer themselves. The California Achievement Test, Terra Nova California Achievement Test is one that parents can give themselves. And are there other ones that you are aware of, Sarah?
I know the RAT is one that can be given if you own it. And I think the publisher may have changed the regulations on who can own that test. But that's an expensive thing to invest in because it's like 25 copies that you get when you buy it. Mm-hmm. You'd be given to other people too, and you can make your money back if you're qualified to administer it, which is, that's a good thing. There are several tests that can be done online at home. The Stanford 10, I know people can find that one online. I have seen California's online. I think Iowa's, they're starting to go that direction also. Just make sure that if you do it yourself, you do it with integrity.
Yes. Read
the directions, set the timer, and close your eyes. Don't read over your child's shoulder. Don't go back and look at the test after and, oh, you knew that. That's not what they need to hear. That's not what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And it's not like a test that you give. When you give a math test, it's either right or it's wrong, and you look at it on a 100% scale. These tests are not done on a 100% scale. Right. They have weighted questions and all kinds of more statistical garbage that we don't know about. So if you do it yourself, just make sure that you do it with integrity. I know I refused to test my children at home. I did it once. Not a good idea, because they decided to race each other. They did not do the best that they could do. I have proctors that work for me who will not test their own children. They bring them to me to test, and they proctor for me because they know that the kids are just going to do better for somebody else. So there's all different kinds of reasons why people will test their own children, which is fine. And there are reasons why you want to take them to somebody else, which is also fine. It's just whatever works better for you.
Maureen says, don't let your child catch your own anxiety.
Amen.
Yes. That's right.
They do.
Exactly.
Well, we're at the end of the questions that our commenters have put in for now. And by the way, if you're watching right now, I see we've got over 40 people on watching right now. If you have any questions that haven't been answered yet, put them in the comments so we can answer them for you live right now. And if we don't catch it while we're live, we will go back and reply to you in the comments too. We'll make sure everybody gets their answers that they need. But we have some questions that have come up in our group. I don't know if everybody who's watching knows HEAV runs a Facebook group that's really, really active and wonderful. And I do highly recommend, if you aren't part of it, go join Homeschooling in Virginia. It's a Facebook group. Go sign up for it, and you can ask your questions in there, and we're in there all the time answering questions too. So I just wanted to point that out to everybody. But let's see. Oh, a big question that comes up all the time is, when do you test? Can I test in September? Do I have to wait till January? Do I have to wait till April? When do we test? What's the best time to do that?
Well, that's an interesting question. The law doesn't specifically say when you have to test. And of course, we know that the SAT, ACT, PSAT test are done generally in the fall, in October, or whenever. You could take the SAT test every month if you wanted to, practically. And so we know that those are in the fall. However, if you test early like that for a regular standardized achievement test, you're not showing the progress that your child will have an opportunity to make during the year. So and it's my opinion, I would just suggest that parents test early enough so that if there's a problem, you'll have time to do something to, test again or do a different type of test. So my suggestion would be February, March, April, May. February would be early to me. So I would really probably say March, April, May, no later than June, because it may take 4 to 8 weeks to get the test results back, depending on the company that you work with. You don't get to score these. A computer scores these, and they'll give you a computer-generated printout that you can photocopy and send to the division superintendent. And that's often another question: who do you send the results to? You send the results to the same person that you filed your notice of intent with, because he's the one that's looking to put that in your file. And so that's the same person that you would send your test results to. So I would say in the spring, March, April, May, no later than June. That would be cutting it very close, because your scores are due August 1st each year that you after you've homeschooled. And even if you've homeschooled part of the year, suppose you've just started in January or February, you've just started homeschooling, you are still going to be required to turn in some type of evaluation, an independent evaluation or a standardized achievement test by August 1st. Even though you did not homeschool a full year, you still are required under law to do that.
I've tested kids that were pulled out in May.
Mm-hmm.
They still had to test. Even somebody pulled out the 1st of June, they were still required to test.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. Misty would like to know, is the untimed cat not recommended? That's what I was planning to give my child, a first grader, due to his anxiety of feeling rushed.
A lot of first grade tests are not timed. They may have one 5-minute section in math, and it's usually the computation section that is required to do like 5 minutes. But most first grades are not timed. In the directions, you're told this test should take approximately this amount of time, but allow the child enough time who's capable of finishing, allow them enough time to finish. So if they're a good reader, fine, do the untimed cat. If they're not a good reader, do an evaluation. Flat out, do an evaluation. You don't want to heighten the anxiety. The reading is just too difficult.
And another thing too, I would never rush my children with testing. If you've got a section that's only 20 minutes, just do 20 minutes that day and then do a regular homeschool day. Don't do the test all in 1 or 2 days. Make sure that you just do a little bit, and then if that's time, then finish with the time on that. The next day you can do another section, whatever the regulations or the rules of the test will allow you to do. But certainly don't put pressure on your children to accomplish all the testing in 1 or 2 days. Give them enough time to relax and know that this isn't as bad as they think it's going to be.
Right.
And actually, most students really do better than you think they will do. It is amazing. Even parents who have been sick and not able to teach their children for a period of time, their children just keep learning. It is amazing what one-on-one will do, or giving them time to read by themselves, or to work on projects, or to learn on their own. It is amazing how well children can do without formal instruction. So don't be afraid that they're just going to really, bomb the test, because they may not. Give them an opportunity to take it and see. And there are no questions asked if your children test above the 4th Stay-Night or 23 percentile or higher. If they're 25 percentile, don't feel bad. That's okay. There could be some learning difficulties. The superintendent cannot say anything about that test score. And something else you need to be aware of also. If there's a sub-score on the testing report that comes back to you, and they may have a composite of, say, a 30 percentile, but there is a low sub-score in math or in English, and that sub-score is below 23 percentile, that is still okay, because the law says a composite score in or above the 4th Stay-Night, 23 percentile or higher. And that composite score is made up, it's like the total score. And so even though you have a low sub-score, that's okay. You can still continue to homeschool. You can still turn that in. And if you have any questions from your superintendent or his designated person, give us a call at HEAV, and we'll be glad to call them and just explain that what a composite score is, and that individual sub-scores are not the same as a composite score. So that's important to know.
So, Misty, the short answer to your question is yes, you can use the untimed cat. It's totally fine.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
I got off a little bit. Sorry.
Charlene says, I know that my 5-year-old kindergartner doesn't have to test, but this is our first year homeschooling. Is there a test I can give him just to see where we're at, like a baseline for next school year?
There probably is. Sarah, what do you suggest?
I would suggest most any test is going to be sufficient at a kindergarten level. Just know that most of them are for non-readers, so that's fine if your child is a non-reader. If they are a reader and you're wanting a baseline on that, you might want to find somebody who can do a Woodcock-Johnson instead, because that will take the child as high as they can go or stay as low as they need to stay.
Okay, good.
Great. And Becky wants to know, what kind of test would you recommend for a child with ADHD?
The RAT, it's short.
When you say the RAT, it's the WRAT?
Yes. The WRAT stands for Wide Range Achievement Test. It is a 45-minute long test. That's really all it takes. And it covers math and English, which is what we are required to test by law. The subsections are word reading, sentence comprehension, spelling, and math. The only thing that is timed is math. Everybody who takes that test from first grade through high school has 15 minutes to do all of the math problems that they can do, starting with 1 + 1 and going all the way through some algebra questions. It is usually sufficient time. If I had a first grader, I wouldn't even tell them that I'm timing them because I don't want to raise that anxiety level. But something that's going to be one-on-one is going to be best because the proctor can prod the child to focus, to come back to task. Mm-hmm. It may be something that the child needs split into 2 different days. Now, the RAT only takes 45 minutes, but if that needs to be split into 2 days, you do a couple of sections here and a couple of sections there. If you do a Woodcock-Johnson, I've had kids who need to split that, and we do an hour one day and an hour another day. And that's usually plenty of time.
Good.
The one-on-one, that's the big deal because it keeps them focused.
Great advice. Thank you. Let's see. Marisol asks, how do I find a person to do an evaluation? I have a first grader.
HEAV.
Right. We have a list on our website under testing, under the testing section of counselors, testers, and tutors. And we have testers that are listed there by geographical area, and you can find one in your area. Also, I suggest you, if you're connected with a co-op or if you're connected with a support group, they usually have testers that will come in and do group testing. The cost is usually very reasonable to do that. And so if you prefer to have 3 or 4 students who would be testing with your child, then it could be divided up that way in a local support group or a co-op. So, and we have those listed on our website also. So you can find that information at heav.org.
Also, church is a good place.
Yes.
There are lots of teachers that are in churches. Neighborhoods have teachers that are qualified or somebody with a bachelor's degree. And just because they're related to the public school does not mean that they are unfriendly to homeschoolers.
Right.
Many of them are very sympathetic towards homeschoolers. So this is why I say interview. Be very careful who you choose. Ask them lots of questions. But those are some really good places to find them.
Great. Karen wants to know, is there a benefit compliance-wise to testing over evaluation? Can a superintendent challenge either method?
Well, yes, he could do it, but it's not likely that he would challenge a standardized achievement test if he has the scores that are printed out from the company that scored the test. So that's pretty cut and dry. But as far as an evaluation goes, yes, a superintendent makes the determination that enough progress has been made for the child to move forward or to continue homeschooling. One thing about an evaluation that is very different than a standardized achievement test is that an evaluation compares the child to himself at the beginning of the year. You're not comparing that child to other students that are his age. So that's the reason when Sarah was saying, find out what an evaluator, how they're going to evaluate their child. What's the standard going to be? Is it going to be a portfolio, samples of the child's work from the beginning of the year to the end of whenever you're getting ready to test your child? So what the evaluator is doing is evaluating the child's progress she is comparing him to himself at the beginning of the year. And so that's extremely important for children who have learning disabilities or physical disabilities and things like this. So that's why an evaluation can be so beneficial. And then in the evaluation letter that is written by the certified teacher, the tutor, or somebody with a master's degree, they need to clearly express in there how they've evaluated the child and that the child has made progress. And it's very important to include those words in the evaluation letter. So I know Sarah has written many of these types of evaluation letters as an evaluator as well as a tester. But it's very important to get an evaluator who knows how to write the correct type of letter so that the superintendent is very clear in his decision that enough progress has been made.
Good to know. Okay, Inez wants to know, do the counties offer free testing for homeschoolers?
They may. A few of them may. There used to be a few more. But remember, public schools tend not to have standardized achievement tests unless they've got some left over and they offer them to homeschoolers, which they may. I would not recommend that you use that free service because it could be very costly in the end. Suppose that you take a young child who has never been in a classroom before, and he goes and he sits in a classroom full of strangers that he's never seen before, never met, doesn't know the teacher, is not familiar with that situation, that classroom situation, and he has to take a standardized achievement test that's timed. He may be very intimidated and not understand, all that he's supposed to do in that situation and may not really reach his full potential. So, and then the scores are not going to come back to the parent. They're going to come to the school first and then to the division superintendent. So if there is a problem with the testing scores, if they're not in the fourth stay 9 or higher, then there are no other options. You're going to have to deal with the superintendent and possibly be put on probation or have to file a remediation plan. So that would not be my first choice to do that at all. So it would not be my recommendation to do that.
Okay. And Christopher and Jennifer would like to know, would you recommend taking a practice test?
I think it would be okay if you felt your child was a little anxious about the test. We have one on our HEAV website under the testing section. You can take a practice test right online and get a feel for filling in, how to answer the questions and so forth. So have you found that practice tests have been helpful, Sarah, with some of your students?
I find that it helps with formatting, and especially when kids have never taken a bubble test before. Mm-hmm. This is something that is very helpful to understand whether they're going to be marking in their book or whether they're going to have a separate page.
Right.
They have to mark on and go back and forth from one to the other. So if they are really new to testing, especially doing a bubble test, yes, it is very helpful to do that. If they're in the 8th grade and they've been doing 5 years of testing, no.
I agree. Yeah. They've got it. They've had some practice. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think too, if you're new to testing, it might help ease some of that mom anxiety Maureen was talking about earlier if you do practice test first.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. I know.
Okay, so Tammy asks, I love all these questions, guys. Thank you so much for putting them in the comments. This has been a lot of fun. Would you test at the level your child is supposed to be in, or the grade that your child is doing most of their work in? My son is doing mostly kindergarten work, but is preschool age, just turned 5.
Well, I would test at the level they're supposed to be in. Even though he's doing well, he'll always do well. And there's nothing wrong with turning in a test score that's 99 percentile. It shows he's doing extremely well because you're comparing your child to other children who are his age, and it shows his level of work is superior to the average 5-year-old child. So I would say test where he's supposed to be.
And again, because the child is so young, you may hit a plateau. Mm-hmm. Where they dig in their heels and I am not going to whatever. And if you've been testing them at that higher level, then you're going to get the anxiety
right.
about the testing from that point. And where do I test them now? So testing them at the younger level is not a bad idea at all.
Absolutely. Ines says, I'm almost in tears with the relief this live stream is giving me. I feel so much better. Thank you.
Oh, you are welcome.
Wonderful.
That's why we're here tonight. Let's see. Oh, she also says, can the person who evaluates my student come from another state as long as he or she is a licensed teacher?
Yes. If she's a teacher, yes. She can, from any state, it says. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
They may need to make sure that they have their teaching license handy and can give you a copy of it, because I have had superintendents request a copy of the teaching certificate.
Mm-hmm. Good to know. Becky says, this is our first year homeschooling. My girls are in 4th and 6th grade this year. Well, welcome to homeschooling, Becky. How can I research the different kinds of tests available to make the best choice for her girls?
Well, you can go to the HEAV website, because we have a section on there where you can order your test, right? It links right to the test publisher or the company that's selling the test. And with each test, there's a description on there of the basics about the test and the levels and the cost and what it covers. And then you can always just take the name of the test and do a Google search, and it'll describe the test and what's on it basically and what it covers and things like that. So you can do a search on the web, but we do have a brief overview of all the tests at the HEAV website under the testing section.
That's great. Katie wants to know, if you use an online curriculum, can you use the report card from that curriculum as proof of progress?
You sure can. Yes, that's another way that you can test. We haven't talked about that, but you can definitely use a report card from your correspondence course, so you don't even have to do a test. You just take the report card and photocopy it and turn it in. You can also use a transcript from a community college. If your child is taking the basics at a community college like language arts and mathematics, then you can certainly use that transcript as well. So, or any distance learning program, if they're providing a transcript for you, you can turn that in for language arts and mathematics also. So that's another way of doing it. It keeps your children from having to test so much.
Great. And this question is for Sarah, I think. Where can the RAT test be found?
It needs to be found by somebody who is qualified to give it. Pearson is who publishes the test. The RAT 5 is the newest one that's out on the market. And they're, a lot of the scoring now for many of these newer tests is to be done online. But a lot of the times those are paper pencil type tests. But Pearson is where you can buy it. Otherwise, you need to find somebody who can actually administer it, who owns the test. I own it. I don't know who else around has that. Do you have anybody on the website that you know of specifically, Yvonne?
No, I can't think. No, I'm not offhand. Okay. I don't know who has it.
Okay. And just FYI, I do travel for testing.
Good to know. And you can be found at thetestinglady.com. So I have that up on the screen for everybody. Go ahead and write that down and visit her when we're done here. Faith, let's see. What about for the child who is not on grade level? Should we test at the level of functioning or where we are teaching them if below age and grade level?
Well, I would not test at all. I would do an evaluation instead of testing. You know, that because if your child is not on grade level and you know your child is below grade level, then, you know, if you have an IEP, if you have a diagnosis of something, some type of learning disability, If you do test, then you can certainly attach that to the test so that the superintendent would have some understanding, either an IEP, a SEP, or a diagnosis of learning disability. But even rather than doing that, I would do an evaluation instead of testing. That would be my recommendation.
I have had parents who will do an evaluation. That's what they formally turn in. And then they'll do a Woodcock-Johnson, which has more parts to it than a RAT, but it's still that one-on-one type thing. And it will give the parent numbers to go by. It also helps the evaluator who is actually watching the child do the work to be able to tell the parent, this is what I'm seeing with them doing. For instance, they start to make a B, but they make it as a D. They may not have been formally diagnosed as dyslexic, but they're 10 years old. They should know the difference between a B and a D. They erase it and they write it properly. This is something that the parent may not actually see the child do, but the tester can actually observe that. If you give them a bubble test, that's not something that can be observed.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that will help the parent know, no, I'm not completely lost. Okay. An evaluation can show a lot of the same thing, but if it's work that the child has already done, say a portfolio evaluation, that's not something that the portfolio evaluator is going to pick up on. They're only going to see what the child has actually finished, but not can produce in front of them. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. And I know that there are some people, parents, and especially dads and grandparents, who want that hard copy with numbers. So if you do the evaluation, but you want the hard copy numbers also, do a Woodcock-Johnson that's going to be more of one-on-one type thing. It's going to start at a lower level. It can start as low as the child needs to start. They start on a pre-K level, and they go all the way up through college level material. So they can go as high as the child can go. And one of the things that you may find is it's not that the child can't think on that age level and produce it orally. They'll be able to do that with a Woodcock-Johnson. But you'll also be able to see, oh, it's their reading that's low, therefore their writing is low. But their oral comprehension is great. Their reading level could be on a college level, but their reading is not, or their writing is not, or, you know, something else that's going on. Like I said, this test is used for diagnostics as well as end-of-year testing. So there's a lot of stuff in it.
Good to know. Okay.
Yeah.
Crystal would like to know. She says, thank you so much. You're easing my anxiety. This is my first year homeschooling, and I've been terrified that I hadn't prepared him for testing. So many options that I didn't know about. Glad we could be here to ease your anxiety too.
And I think it's important to know too, we don't really have to prepare our children for testing. We just have to teach them. That's all we have to do. And I think you'll find that in teaching them and being consistent, it's very important to be consistent, especially in language arts and mathematics as you teach your children, to make sure you cover those subjects and you do it, you know, the way you're supposed to. Then your children will do well on tests generally. So I think I was always very pleasantly surprised with the way my children did. So, you know, I don't want parents to feel anxious about it. And, you know, I'd just like to mention one thing too. There are certain students that don't have to be tested in case you're anxious about this and you don't know what to do. Parents who have religious exemption, their students do not need to be tested. If you're taught by a certified teacher or tutor under the certified tutor provision, not the notice of intent, but the certified tutor provision, then you don't have to turn in testing scores for that. If your child has graduated from high school, regardless of what age he is, if he's 16 and he's graduated, then you don't have to test that child any longer. Or if he's 18 years old, you don't have to test your child, even if you're still homeschooling him, but he's 18 years old. He's not under compulsory attendance laws any longer at age 18. So in that case, you don't have to test. But for seniors who are in their senior year and by August 1st, they've already graduated, you don't have to test your seniors that year. So they've probably taken the SAT or ACT test or something like that anyway, but you don't have to actually turn that score in for their senior year. So there's several, and also students who are not 6 by September 30th. They don't have to be tested either, those little young ones. So there's a whole group of people that don't have to be tested each year.
The comment that I have for the seniors, it is a good idea to still test them because military wants to see completion of high school. And many of homeschoolers don't do a diploma, they don't do a graduation, whatever. So the military wants to see completion. They want to see that 12th grade year. I've had recruiters call me about this. There are also government jobs, not military related, but whether it's federal government, state government, or city government, they want to see completion of high school. So have that 12th grade testing, they're happy. They say, okay, you finished. This is good.
I would recommend that parents do a transcript and give a diploma because that shows completion of the 12th grade. So
yes, it does.
I would highly recommend a transcript. And you know, the days of not having a transcript and not having a diploma or feeling like you have to have a GED, those days are long gone. You know, we really as homeschool parents need to document what our students are doing. So make sure that you have that 12th grade transcript completed and give your children a signed diploma, which the law allows you to do. Very good things to do.
And you can get that diploma from HEAV.org.
Yeah, you can.
Yes, you can. HEAV has a beautiful graduation ceremony too.
They do. They do.
Robin says, hi, my son turned 5 after the deadline for the start of public school this school year. I've been teaching him kindergarten material. Can I test him at the end of this school year? I was not able to register him with the school system because of his birth date.
Well, yes, you could test him, but I would not, you know, I certainly wouldn't turn the scores into anyone. For your own benefit, you can do that. Now, if you are, you're talking about public school. So if you're planning to put him in public school, though, at the end of this year, even though you've already taught him kindergarten material, it is not likely they're going to go ahead and move him into first grade. It's more likely they will still put him in kindergarten based on his age. And so he'll be repeating some things. That's typically what happens with children who learn early or who are taught at home and they go in the public school system, because the government school has policy. They don't look as much at the children as individuals and having individual accomplishments or individual needs. And so it's very likely that your child will be placed in a government school kindergarten, even though he's already completed a kindergarten program. However, if you choose to homeschool him, then you can move straight on into first grade material, second grade material when he's ready to do that. So it's your decision. It's up to you, but there are definite advantages to continuing to homeschool and to challenge him on the level that he's learning, because he could be very bored and in a government school classroom and create some problems and issues just because they're little and they're bored. So
Robin just added that she's not putting him in public school.
Oh, good. Okay.
So she's a homeschooler.
All right. Then you just keep on with it. That's fine.
Just do the next thing, whatever that next thing is.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
So, but the short answer there is that she does not have to test him, but she can if she wants to for her own benefit.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so Faith says she says here, I was told by my county that even though I am a teacher with a master's degree, that I still have to test because my certification is not current. Yvonne, is that accurate?
She's got a master's degree.
Your certification is not current. No, well, you have a master's degree. It's not both things. You don't have to have current certification and a master's degree. It's or. You can either have a master's degree or have current certification from any state. And so the master's degree covers that exactly. So that is incorrect information. It's or.
Okay, so if she continues to have trouble with her county, she can call into HEAV and have them help her straighten that out.
And we'll contact the superintendent and go over the law.
Great. Let's see. Oh, Ruth says yes, transcript and diploma.
Right.
And Inez would like to know, what does a transcript entail?
Well, a transcript would have, of course, identifying information. The date of graduation would be on there. You would have the grades, the names of the subjects that your child has taken. You would have, this is high school level. This would be 9th grade and up. You do not need to do a transcript until you get to the 9th grade, the high school level. So you'd have your subjects, that list of the subject that was taught. You'd have a grade average that you'd have on there. You translate that to a grade point average. And you would also put on there any special awards or any special things that your child has been involved in, apprenticeships, any college courses that have been taken also. Any of those things you would include on your transcript. And HEAV has a transcript service also. We have a transcript service, and we can take your information, put it on a one-page form that colleges are accustomed to receiving. And we can work with you on creating that transcript. So you can also go to our website, and we have information in more detail on how to calculate a grade point average and so forth with that. So on the HEAV website at heav.org.
Okay, and Katie would like to know, how does the superintendent view an evaluation from a relative with the same last name?
Well, they may question it. There is no law that says that a relative can't do an evaluation. However, they may think it's unethical. For instance, if the father has a degree, is a licensed teacher, and he evaluates his own child, that may, the evaluation has to be accepted by the superintendent. So for that reason, he may not accept it just for ethical reasons. And so I would be cautious about that. Certainly relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, they can do evaluations if they meet the other, the other requirements. Having the same last name may raise some questions. I can only say that. I can't say for sure what they would do, but there's a possibility it could raise some questions, and you may need to explain it. So just try to explain it.
Okay. And we have another really good question here. Are keeping grades important when they are in elementary school? Our son is in 1st grade.
Well, that's up to you. No, I didn't think they were too important. I knew how my child was doing without doing lots of weekly testing. I just knew how they were doing because it's one-on-one. And so I had a plan book, and in the back or in the side of my plan book in the margin, I would just write the grades on my math test or compositions, or, and that's where I kind of keep my grades until they got to be older in high school. And then I was much more careful about grading and keeping those records in order to put them on the transcript at the end of the year. So in elementary, you know how they're doing. And so I personally was relaxed about that. but it's up to you. It's what you're comfortable with. There is certainly nothing that you have to turn into the superintendent regarding grades, even at the high school level. So, it's for your own benefit. And if it's helpful for you, then certainly do it. And if it's not, then you know how your children are doing. So it's completely up to you the extent that you want to do that.
Okay, and Tammy just wanted to, oh, wait a second, I showed the wrong one. Tammy wants to clarify, if I have a master's degree, I do not have to have my son tested and results sent in each year?
No. If you have a master's degree, you can do an evaluation. That's what the law says. You can do you must do some type of evaluation for your child or standardized achievement tests. So if you have a master's degree, you can be an evaluator, is what the law says.
Okay, but since she was the one she was a teacher, but she doesn't have a current certificate.
But so, she has a master's degree. So
she has a master's degree, but she's talking about testing her own children, not whether she can be an evaluator for someone else.
Oh, yes. A parent that has, she can. Depending on the test that she uses, you just have to go by the publisher's rules and regulations with the test. And there are certain tests that parents can, test themselves, can use themselves or proctor themselves. And so without a master's degree, just with a high school diploma, or, there are no requirements for that.
Okay.
Can she do the evaluation on her son?
I would think that would not be a good idea, because a parent has a vested interest in the success of their children. And ethically, I would expect that the superintendent would not accept that, because an evaluation has to be accepted by the superintendent. So, and it is a subjective determination that he's going to make. And so he may require either testing be done or somebody else do an evaluation. I don't think that would be unreasonable for him to do that.
Right. Okay.
I did not evaluate my own children. I trained somebody to do evaluations.
Good. All right.
Good thinking.
I know.
So what do you do if you have a student who you've graduated early? So their age-wise, they would still be under compulsory attendance laws, but you graduated them from high school early. Do you still have to test them?
No, you don't. If they're graduated, no, you don't. The homeschool laws don't apply to students who have graduated.
Good to know. Okay, so everyone who's watching, we still have about 30 people who are still watching. If you have a question that we haven't answered yet, please put it in the comments and we will. Here we go. Inez says the Terra Nova 2 Cat 6 test, can that be administered by the parent?
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. And it definitely can. I checked on that with Seton today, and they sent me a copy of the test regulations, and a parent can do that, can administer that test. Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
I have a comment to make. This is something that hasn't come up much, but there is another test out there besides the ACT and the SAT as a college entrance exam. CLT,
yes,
learning test.
Can you say that for us one more time, because you broke up a little bit?
CLT, Classic Learning Test.
Right.
This was developed by some guys, I think, at King's College, which is in New York. It is a good test for homeschoolers to do, because it goes along more with the classic learning style. It is not Common Core based. And what you need to do is be careful about whether the college that your child is going to go to will accept that in place of the SAT and the ACT, because it is not real popular yet, but it's getting there. From what I understand, like the first year that they did it, maybe 25 colleges accepted it. The second year is like 75. So it more than doubled in the number of colleges that accepted it. And now I'd say that they're up over 100.
Right.
I haven't checked their website recently, but there are only certain places that are administering that test. It is done online. So homeschoolers, I think, can actually take it in their home. You don't necessarily have to go to another place, but you have to get that cleared through the CLT people first.
Right, right. It's kind of it's a test that is comparable to the ACT and the SAT for college entrance is what it is. However, I would say that it would not meet the requirements to send that in instead of a standardized achievement test because it's not included. The law is very specific that it will only accept the SAT, the ACT, and the PSAT instead or in lieu of a standardized achievement test score. So far, that's the way the law is written.
Okay, we have quite a lot of other questions that just came in. I was thinking we were winding down, but now there's like 5 more in here. All right, Robin says, just for clarification, I mentioned public school deadlines because I would need to submit a homeschool form to the school, and I can't since my son is too young. If I test my son now for kindergarten, when should I turn in the results? Next year, I plan to continue to 1st grade and would like to continue to progress.
You would turn in the results when your child is 6 on September 30th of the school year. So he just needs to be, no matter what grade he's in, if he is 6, the year he is 6 on September 30th, that's the following August you turn in test scores. You have him tested and you turn in those scores by August 1st.
Okay, and Katie says, based on what you just said about graduating a child early, do you just send a diploma to the superintendent or do you also need to test for that last year?
Well, that's up to you. You certainly don't send a diploma to the superintendent. The law doesn't require you to do that. But as a courtesy, it may be nice to notify the superintendent that you've completed your homeschool studies and your child has graduated. That way they won't be anticipating any other test scores that would be coming from your child. So you can test for that year if you want to, but the law doesn't really require it if your child has graduated. So it's up to you what you do. But I would let them know if your child is young as a courtesy, has graduated early.
Great. Colleen says, I'm sorry I missed the beginning, but are there tests that are more inclusive as far as breadth of information? I've heard the CAT is pretty simple and stays within grade level only.
I think they're all pretty much the same. They cover, a lot of the same material. Sarah, you want to address that again?
Those bubble tests usually cover most of the questions within the grade level, but they do have some on either side by 1 or 2 years. When you hit that 2-year mark, there's not very many, but a lot of it is what is covered within that year and a little bit more on either side. If you want something that is going to show more advancement for your child, for your own knowledge, not for the school, to turn in the scores, but if you want this for your own knowledge, then I would find somebody that can do a Woodcock Johnson because that will go much higher.
Great. Here we have, Sherry asks, why do some testing companies have you test the year they're entering, not the year they have just completed? This is really confusing. It is confusing.
The test in the spring is the same test for the fall. And different school systems have wanted it different ways. Sometimes it's the school system that wants it in the fall. And then they would take the next level in the spring. But as far as the homeschooling is concerned, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but as far as the homeschooling is concerned, we're looking more towards the spring level.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Yvonne?
Right. Yes, correct.
Okay.
You just have to be careful and follow the instructions for ordering the test. And if you have any questions, be sure to call the company that you're ordering the test from to make sure you're getting the correct version of the test for the age of your child and the grade level.
Okay. And we have another question here. I've asked online before and got different answers. That's because when you ask online, anybody can answer.
Right.
The untimed test we got from Academic Excellence, is that approved by the superintendent? Our son is a special needs child who had a 504 when he attended public school and kindergarten. Do we need documentation to prove that he needs extra time? So our question is the untimed test for Academic Excellence okay?
It may be. I have not known a superintendent to not accept a standardized achievement test. I don't know if they know that it's untimed. I really don't know because I don't know that the printout says that. So I honestly don't know the answer exactly to that question. You can certainly document any learning challenges that your child has when you send in the test scores, if that will be helpful. If the scores are low or, you can certainly do that, but you may want to look at an evaluation instead of a test.
Well, I know our first year testing here, we used the untimed CAT from Academic Excellence and had no problem.
Yeah, and just because a test is untimed doesn't mean that it's the best test for them, even though they need extra time. It is helpful, but sometimes it doesn't make the test any easier. When I have talked to publishers about untimed tests, they've told me it doesn't seem to really make a whole lot of difference in the scoring as to whether they're timed or whether they're untimed. Having said that, you still have to go by the rules of the test to maintain the integrity and the validity of the test, as well as your own integrity. So if it says that it's a timed test, do it as timed. If you're allowed to take it untimed, take it untimed. There's nothing on the paperwork that goes to the school system that says it's an untimed test.
Great. I do want to address one thing real quick. That question started with, I've asked online before and got lots of different answers. I just want to tell you, if you run into that problem where you're getting lots of mixed information, you just don't know what the right answer really is, please call into HEAV, message us on Facebook. You can email us. We can give you good guidance and the right answer. So when you ask online in big groups, everyone on the group has an opinion, and it isn't always necessarily going to guide you in the right direction. So please, that's what we're here for. You don't even have to be a member, although we do appreciate your membership. You don't have to be a member to get help here. So call us. That's what we're here for. Amber says, would testing or an evaluation be best for a special needs child coming from a private school into a homeschooling environment? He is not on grade level.
Evaluation.
Evaluation, yes.
Okay, that was a nice clear-cut answer right there. I hope that helped, Amber. Tammy says, sorry for so many questions. I went to the HEAV website for the NOI, and when I clicked on it, oh dear, it gave it a 404 error. Where can I get the NOI? We will look into that error right away. I know we have some of our wonderful tech people in the background watching this video right now, and I'm sure they're scurrying to go check that error. Thank you for letting us know that it was giving that error. It'll probably be fixed in about 30 seconds. Let's see.
Sandra,
yes.
I am going to have to go because my battery is running out on my phone. And it's
oh my goodness.
I only have a little bit, and I cannot plug it in. I can't reach to plug it in. So the cord isn't that long. So I'm going to have to close this out for tonight. And
that is okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We have been on for an hour and a half here, and we've answered a lot of questions. And if you're watching now and you have more questions, please go ahead and put them in the comments, and we'll, at the very least, answer them right in the comments for you, even if we can't get to it live here.
Absolutely. I'll be glad to do that.
Yes.
We'll answer all the questions that you send us.
Absolutely. Yvonne, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Sarah, it was a pleasure to meet you here and have you help out our watchers tonight. And everybody who joined us tonight, thank you for being here. Again, if you have any questions, you can either message us on Facebook, email us, or go ahead and put them right in the comments here, and we'll get to you. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a blessed evening, and good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.